This is TV Podcast Industries, and we're discussing Watchmen Episode 9, See How They Fly. Welcome back, fellow watchers. This is TV Podcast Industries, and we're watching The Watchmen Final Episode, Episode 9, See How They Fly. I am one of your hosts, Chris.
I'm one of your hosts, Derek.
Hi there, fellow watchers. I'm Sample2346, otherwise known as John.
Excellent. With a H.
With an H.
With a H.
I am one of your hosts, of course, John. Not created from a sample.
No.
But I do believe you have a very special question for our audience at the beginning of this episode.
Yes, I do. I have an urgent announcement, fellow watchers. If you have been enjoying our feedback episode, then you'll have been listening to our Watchmen pub quiz. Mm-hmm. And of course, our final feedback episode will be coming later this week. And of course, I have to give out the episode 9 question before we do that, when we will actually toss up the points of everyone who has participated. And we'll be announcing, of course, the winner of the pub quiz, who's got the most points. And of course, they will then receive the great giveaway of Watchmen related goodies. So yes, here we go, fellow watchers. Episode 9 question. Quoting an ancient Egyptian inscription to the newspaper seller, name the places Adrian Veidt mentions when he first sees Lady True's quantum centrifuge and professes that the end is nigh. So there we go, fellow watchers. Remember, you can enter now. Send all your answers through to feedback@tvpodcastindustries.com. Over in our group, we will add the 9th question to the post on our Facebook group. So you can head on over to facebook.com/groups/TV Podcast Industries to also see the questions are written out as well. So good luck to everyone. And remember, you can either send in your final answer to the question for episode 9, or if you haven't sent in any answers before, you can send all 9 in at once as well. So best of luck, fellow watchers, on the pub quiz. And remember, have a drink whilst you're doing it.
Absolutely. We made it really easy for you. We put out a podcast with all other 8 questions so far. There's 9 points available on those questions, 1 point available for that question that John just gave you there for the 3 places mentioned in that quote that Adrian Veidt gives out in this episode. So that gives you 10 points that are available to you. It is the person who gets the most points who will be in with the chance to get those goodies. So you don't have to get all the questions right. Just get them in as soon as possible to us. But you do have some extra time because we will be recording our feedback episode on Thursday of this week.
Yay!
Yes, we wanted to give you 24 extra hours to get all your questions in. Go back, rewatch what you need, look up what you need. Yes, we're giving you 24 hours to get your questions and answers in, but also we want to hear your feedback. What did you think about this episode? What did you think, more importantly, about the season as a whole? Mm-hmm. Give us all your feedback to feedback@tvpodcastindustries.com or over on the group at facebook.com/groups/TV Podcast Industries. But for now, let's talk about what we thought of this. Boys, I think it's about time we discuss this episode, this finale, this culmination of 9 episodes, 9 hours. It's gonna be a good one. So, with that, I would usually hand over to Derek, but as I am recording this sentence, he is actually under the desk fiddling with wires. So, I am just gonna quickly put some time together by asking, so, did anyone like this episode? Oh no, he's back to this. He's back from under the desk fixing the wires. Our producer, multi-talented, he can produce and present at the same time, but he's back.
I just discovered that it's really important when recording a podcast about an episode of a TV show, which we'll be recording for a while, to plug in the computer that you're recording on. It's very important. Massively important.
Yes, it is. Any aspiring podcasters out there should really learn that basic early point to... Yeah, I'm sorry, that's a 101. But anyway, let's jump on with the episode details. Derek, do you want to tell us who wrote, who directed this important episode.
Yes, this episode once again written by Damon Lindelof, and this time with Nick Cuse. Nick Cuse wrote the movie The Hunt with Damon Lindelof, which has been cancelled, so it may see the light of day in the future at some point. But Nick Cuse also worked on The Leftovers with Damon Lindelof. I'm going to say this now, and I'll probably say it at the end of the episode. What do you do after The Watchmen is finished if you enjoyed the show? If you haven't watched The Leftovers, go watch it. This shouldn't be just a thing on IMDb that Damon Lindelof also did. Go see it. It's an excellent, excellent show. And lots of the people that were involved in this show worked on The Leftovers as well. So go check that out.
Yes, do. But also, I'm devastated about The Hunt. I basically only heard about it recently. He gave an interview at the America's Writers Guild with Mark Bernardin of Black Man Beyond, or I should say Fat Man Beyond fame. It was a fantastic interview. And he told the story about The Hunt and why it may never see the light of day. But I am, fingers crossed, praying that a Amazon, a HBO, a Netflix come along and save it on a streaming platform, because it deserves to be seen, I believe.
Yeah, it was pretty close to being released as well. It was only a few weeks away, I think, when it eventually got canned, unfortunately. But hopefully, yeah, we'll get to see it in the future. Yeah. This episode was directed by Fred Toye. We talked about Fred Toye earlier on this year, guys. He directed episode 4 of The Boys, The Female of the Species, and also directed this episode of Watchmen. That's kind of cool, isn't it?
Yes, we loved his work. But I hear he's also doing 2 other episodes of an upcoming show based on a French comic.
Yes, he's done 2 episodes of the TV show Snowpiercer. The first season has already completed, and is ready to go on Netflix, I think, next year. And season 2, I think they're filming at the moment, but he's already done 2 episodes of that. So, intrigued to see what he does, but kind of cool that he's done an episode of The Boys and an episode of Watchmen, our 2 shows that we've just done back to back. And he's worked on both of them. That's quite cool.
Yes, the stars align, I think, here.
John, do you want to tell us what the official episode description for this episode is?
Everything ends for real this time. I love these ones. They're so short and sweet.
Absolutely.
Remember, I used to ramble on for a paragraph. They were a work of and crafted, but nonetheless, do you like this new setup?
Yes, but I do have a challenge for John going forward, that all of his episode descriptions going forward should just be 10 words. What he does with those 10 words, it's up to him, but it should be 10
Whatever
words.
he wants. Yeah, I like it.
Episode 1's easy, the start, then probably around episode 5 and 6, it's the middle. And the final episode, say if it's 10, is the end.
There you go.
There you go.
Then I have to think up some things in between, like the 75th quartile. I don't know.
Your math isn't very good, is it? 75th quartile?
Of episodes. Yeah.
Okay, interesting. Good stuff. Let's get on to our points about the episodes, guys.
The doomsday clock has been set to 5 minutes to midnight.
Yes, we are back with our final 5 minutes to midnight. Boys, we are getting there. It is right at the end. So, to kick off our 5 minutes to midnight discussions, Derek, do you want to give us your top point?
Absolutely. I'm just really intrigued because in our final episode, we have another change to something we knew in the past. I love how this show has consistently changed our perception of things we've already seen over and over again. You know, we got an episode last week, which was all about time moving in different ways and your perception changing because you're seeing time in different ways. This episode, my one effectively, is that Adrian Veidt created a new plan after meeting Lady True the first time. Because that happened in 2008, a year before meeting John Osterman, Dr. Manhattan returning from space, effectively. He knew all of the information that Dr. Manhattan was going to give to him, which I just think is really intriguing because it gives you a new impression of Adrian Veidt. He'd been sitting around moping, basically, for years after his massively devastating attack on New York had worked, but he's getting no credit for it, right? He's been sitting around moping, going, "Am I going to get any kind of praise from anybody at all?" Arrives on his doors, Lady True going, "What if I was able to banish all of the nuclear weapons?" And his response to her is, "Well, I would have done that if I was able to do it, and nobody can do it otherwise." I love her response to him. She's going, "Well, you're just a man and you have limitations." And he thinks this is an equality comment from her and goes, "Oh, but I suppose as a woman you can do it, can't you?" She's like, No. There is somebody else." And you know exactly who he is.
Yeah, and what she says, squids are... It's effectively a rerun. All these squids he's dropping are just like reruns. Listen out, Star Wars. Yeah, I mean, just a great little meeting, I think, between these two powerhouses. Although I suppose in that instance, Adrian Veidt does seem like he's just gone past his sell-by date a bit, and like, here is the new kid on the block. I think the great thing about this, though, is that, you know, as she reveals how she came into being, that effectively she is his daughter, and the sample used by her mother, who guessed the code that was in the Watchmen, in the comics as well, Ramesses II. That, you know, it's a great little moment where he's like, I will not call you daughter. And he goes on about how he was born into wealth, but he gave it away so that he could start from nothing and prove to everyone that he is worthy of that wealth that he's given away effectively. And so he goes, my gift to you is nothing. And you're just like, you are a complete arse.
Oh,
Adrian.
absolutely. I suppose this is what kind of kicks off Lady True's version of the plan, effectively. She is so angry from this point onwards, which I love, because that's not what we expected. We thought she was coming across as, you know, I want to celebrate this moment with my mother and father being here for us. No, she wants to rub it in his face that even though he didn't give her the money that she wanted to start off this whole process back in 2008, she was still able to accomplish it. She was still able to get there. And on the way, she bought his company as well. Her company became so big, she bought his company. I love that. It's just from that moment onwards, it's a great change to the dynamic between those two. We thought she was going to get Daddy back from a planet far away to show him how wonderful her life was. No, she's rubbing it in his face that she is the smartest woman on Earth. He was only called the smartest man on Earth by the media. He isn't even the smartest person on Earth. That's her now.
Well, it's that huge slice of humble pie that he has to eat, which is just really good. Even just that moment where the space rocket that has come down to take him off Europa, the voice from the spacecraft is like, no, put your hands on your hips in order for him to be, you know, sealed, and so that he survives the journey back to Earth, and obviously then into Lady True's sort of greenhouse at the Millennium Clock.
And one thing, just if you didn't notice, just to point it out, I'm sure it was very obvious to everyone, but him with his hands on his hips, cast in gold, is a reference to that little action figure that you see in his office in Karnak, right? So she is making him look like a plaything, basically, as well. So just stand in the office, you just wait there in gold carbonite, effectively, until my plan is ready to go, and then I'll unfreeze you, and then you can see how bloody good I am at my job. Like, I love when she unfreezes him after taking him back, and he goes, oh, Dr. Manhattan's alive, he's on Earth, he's in Tulsa, I think, he's somewhere nearby, he's a human now, and she goes, yeah, I know all that, and I bet to kill him in an hour's time. And he's like, what? I thought you needed my help, basically. Brilliant.
I did love the fact that back in episode 2-3, when we introduced Lady True, that that item crashing back to Earth, was Ozymandias.
Yes, episode 4. Yeah.
Yes,
we believed it was maybe Dr. Manhattan or something. I think we potentially even theorized it was Ozymandias coming back from wherever, and we were right. It's just, again, timing is so fluid. Everything is being experienced at the same time in the show, and the use of time as a story instrument, as a story piece, is amazing.
Yes, I think I mentioned back whenever it was in episode 4. I think it was the moment where the camera pulls back whilst on Europa, on the moon of Jupiter. And it comes back, and then it comes out of the gold statue. I think at the time it was like, okay, you know, that he's in there, and maybe everything he is experiencing is in his head. Well, no, it actually did happen. That was the only thing that was clarified. But it really just felt that there was something more to that statue than met the eye after that particular camera shot.
Yeah, the camera started on Adrian Veidt's face on Europa and then came out of the gold face on the part.
Exactly.
And I think very close after that we have the comment from Laurie going, why did you make it look so old? Well, she didn't. It's just spray paint, basically, over the top of Adrian Veidt. Brilliant.
Although I do like golden carbonite. That's quite a good one.
Absolutely.
Blinging the carbonite.
I will also say I did a very bad thing because we got this episode late and we were watching it around the same time as everybody else. I did listen to Damon Lindelof's discussion about the last 3 episodes on the official podcast of Watchmen. The background behind him being hidden in plain sight is fascinating. Check it out. There you go. That's my only one that I'm going to give you for that episode.
Okay.
That's my first point, is just that the meeting of Lady True and Adrian Veidt completely changes the plan of Adrian. He was effectively going to sit there for the rest of his life having these squid dropping randomly around the world until Lady True came into his life to tell him that there is another plan.
Interesting.
John, what's your big point for this episode at 5 minutes to midnight?
It is that she's a raging narcissist. So, I mean, effectively that Lady True here, is the villain of the piece to some extent. Oh yeah, you know, there are many villains. There is the 7th Cavalry, for example. Mm-hmm. But it's just the fact that she's kind of been, really sneaky about it. And I just love the fact that Adrian Veidt is, you know, once he has kind of been decarbonized from the golden carbonite, he's recognizing this narcissist tendency of her wanting to become God, because, well, as he says himself, I can recognize them because I'm one, you know, she didn't lick it from the pavement, basically. Mm-hmm. She certainly has, his genes. So I really just like this. You know, as you were saying before, she's bought his company. She has completely proven Adrian Veidt wrong, by setting up the company, constructing the Millennium Clock, buying his company, making him eat humble pie, making him as small as an ant, and she is wanting to become as big as an elephant, dare I say. Okay. Just this whole thing is that, you know, we felt she's been on, well, at least for myself, I have always been feeling that she has been on the side of, say, Angela Abar. You know, you've had her working with Will Reeves. It all seems that she is doing stuff that seems right, or, you know, to help out, because it's been targeted at this white supremacist, racist organization of the 7th Cavalry. And really what you find out is that her plans are probably 1,000-fold worse than theirs, because she is looking for pure power, pure control I mean, she's willing to destroy the 7th Cavalry, absolutely, but, you know, you see Adrian Veidt is afraid of what she will do, how she will want to turn the world into her own image. And so, again, it's just this really nice blurring of morals and morality, and how things are going to pan out. You know, it's not just simply that she's coming in to save the day. That's a byproduct of the fact that she wants ultimate power, mm-hmm. and total power across at least the solar system that she lives in, and specifically on Earth. And I just think it's really a good spot with it all relating around Adrian Veidt sort of meeting his daughter again after she came to him in Karnak, you know, those many years ago, and he gave her nothing. And in a sense, that put down by him has probably helped fuel exactly what she wants to do. But in this instance, she's not going to hide away and not take credit for it. She is going to make it full frontal and totally about her.
Mm. You're absolutely right. And even part of that narcissism is her turning around to Adrian Veidt and going, "Oh, you called me daughter in the spelling on the planet of Europa. That must have taken a lot of effort, father." Very good, very good.
For me, looking back on it, again, hindsight is 2020. It should have been obvious that Lady True was the ultimate villain of this piece. In that, when you think about it, Adrian Veidt, Ozymandias, was the ultimate villain of the Watchmen comic book, of the original. When you think about it, like, it should have been obvious, but that was one of the reasons I'm tipping my hat to the writer's room, in that when you first read Watchmen, it was a revelation that Adrian Veidt was the bad guy, quote unquote. And this episode was the revelation that Lady True was the bad guy, quote unquote. Now, our understanding of why they wanted to do it, they were the bad guys, right? And in theory, you could say that they were the good guys because, for example, what Ozymandias did in the comic books with the squid, the interdimensional event, it did cause peace for a long period of time, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. He did make the world a better place, again, quote unquote. But what I'm finding really interesting is looking back at all the pieces, the threads and the story beats. The writing was on the wall all the way back then. It was just the final puzzle piece that when we saw this scene about her wanting to become a god, and why she wanted to do it, that you then go, that piece is fit into the puzzle and you see the picture as the whole and you go, oh, now I get it. Now I see why this is a bad thing. It was just, it's writing like this that every now and again reminds me of why I love TV and good TV.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the interesting thing about how it's written as well is that having said all this, and it's mainly through the reaction of Adrian Veidt, but, you know, we never actually get to see her blue or dispose of those powers how she wills. So certainly the signposts are there that she wanted this total power. Nonetheless, we actually never get a chance to see how she would use that. And, you know, again, that kind of hiding in plain sight that she has, you know, she helped Angela recover from the nostalgia pills. She was working with Will Reeves. It was all for selfish ends, but it was to get that power, and we just don't know how she's going to use it. I think we've got a fair guess that she may dispose of it in ways that could be problematic, but she still, you know, was willing to put the 7th Cavalry in their place, I suppose.
Yeah. So her plan, just to make sure we highlight it, her plan was she'd get the power, she'd banish all nuclear weapons from the entirety of the world, something that Adrian Veidt didn't do, and something that Dr. Manhattan didn't think of doing, and it said that he was never asked to do that, so he didn't do it, basically, because he knows what happens, he knows the outcomes. He was never asked to do it, he didn't do it. He's not a very imaginative guy, I suppose. But that was her plan, and I like the idea. The idea is, why would God do what they did? If I was God, I'd do this. And that's what she's trying to become. She's trying to become God because she believes she would make better choices with the powers that Dr. Manhattan has, even though she doesn't really understand them. Not many people do. And that's what we got last episode, in episode 8. We now understand his powers. His powers are, well, he can't do any of that because he already knows the outcome because it's already happened. So the minute Lady True got the powers, she would suddenly have known how everything would turn out and not be able to just click her fingers and get rid of nuclear weapons.
Exactly.
Because it's not omnipotence that you get. So I love that concept, and I love the fact that she didn't actually achieve it, and we didn't see her blue. We just see a massive ship drop on her face, and that's it.
Yeah, the quantum centrifuge.
That's it.
Yes. But I really did wish that they used that old adage, which was absolute power corrupts absolutely. Because that's part of it as well. It's that, yes, you can become a god. She could have become a god, and she may have had altruistic intentions, but with the power of a god, it will corrupt her. But at the same time as well, we also know she was already corrupted because she was willing to do heinous things to become the god that she wanted to become, but also she did good things. So it's again that she wasn't actually the villain. There were many villains in the season.
Exactly.
Which is the interesting part. That kind of leads me on to my final point, or my main point for this piece, which is Lady True was so manipulative. It was fantastic because she used the 7th Cavalry to mask her plans from Dr. Manhattan. So we knew that Dr. Manhattan could see to a point that he was like, okay, we've got 10 years because the 7th Cavalry will come. He wasn't able to see beyond that because she was the puppet master. She was the Vietnamese puppet master playing with the strings and able to mask all of her activities without Dr. Manhattan noticing, because she understood how his power, I believe she understood how his powers worked. She was able to get the 7th Cavalry to make the cage, which stopped his powers from being used and stopped him from escaping and seeing up to that point or beyond that point. Yeah. Which was all made of the lithium batteries. She got the 7th Cavalry to make them. She gave them the battery. She allowed them to steal the power packs. Mm-hmm. Her reasoning for this was the ends justified the means. Mm-hmm. It got her to where she needed to get to, but she was also helping Will Reeves, by taking down Cyclops.
Yeah.
And she takes down Cyclops. And we find so many interesting things about that in this very short speech by Keane and Keane Senior, or I would say Keane Senior is there, but Keane Junior.
Keane Junior. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
And also his fantastic plants, which Laurie makes fun of, and I was so happy for. Absolutely.
Yeah. They're the ones that Dr. Manhattan wears throughout the comic books until he eventually stops wearing pants at all, basically. Yeah. They're exactly the ones that you see over Vietnam as well. So it's as if Keane Jr. is so uneducated about Dr. Manhattan's powers that he thinks he must wear these particular pants. He seems to think there's some kind of connection between that and the pants, I suppose. He certainly shouldn't be getting this kind of power. He doesn't have the intellect to use it in any stretch of the imagination. But I do love how it all plays out with Lady True reading out the 2-page letter from Will, and about 4 or 5 lines into it, they go, "Oh, get on with it. We don't need to hear the letter. Are you going to kill us?" And she's like, "Of course I'm going to kill you," and then just kills them all.
Yeah. I love the fact that everything with the 7th Cavalry was actually just an extension of Lady True's plans for us. Mm-hmm. Every part of it. So when you start looking at the whole, then you really do see why she did what she did and why she allowed certain things to happen. So that, because it all was the ultimate game plan. She is the master manipulator, the master puppet maker, and puppeteer, the master chess player, if you will.
Or at least, just like her father, she thinks she is.
Yes, and that's exactly it. Let's move our doomsday clock a bit closer to midnight so we can discuss these other points.
The doomsday clock has been set to 4 minutes to midnight.
Yes, definitely. Lady True, just like her father, a little narcissistic, and her decision on plans as to what she's going to do, very similar to what her father would have done. But one thing that did come out, which is my point at 4 minutes to midnight, or my medium point for the episode, I'm glad Angela and Will were right, I suppose, because what we saw throughout the last episode, we saw that moment where Angela kind of shouted through time to Will and revealed that Judd Crawford has got a KKK outfit in his wardrobe. And we thought last episode that meant that she got Judd Crawford, her friend, killed because of a piece of information that she wasn't completely sure of. And she thought she'd started the whole thing. Actually, it turns out that she was right. We hear from Keane when he's saying his whole speech that Judd Crawford was a racist, and he made friends with Angela for the last 2 or 3 years to hide in plain sight right at her side, to make her look as if he was a friend, to make it look like he was beyond reproach. There's an interesting one going right back to the first episode, that battle where the 7th Cavalry are trying to fly away with the batteries from the farmhouse.
Yep.
And we see Judd Crawford chase them down, and he won't give up on chasing them down until he's killed them. Well, the reason is because he has to cover up something that had happened that shouldn't have happened, that was going to reveal their plans. I love how, once again, throughout this series, if you look back on previous episodes, you see things that were hidden right there in front of you. Why would Judd Crawford go so far? You hear the co-pilot in their version of Archie, the police ship they had in the first episode. You hear her going, "We don't need to chase them down, we'll catch them later." And he goes, no, I'm going after them, and takes them down. He does that because he is so centrally involved in this whole plan that everything has to go like clockwork, and he's going to make that happen. He's going to grease the wheels and going to make that happen. So I'm really glad that Angela and Will were right about their decision to take Judd Crawford out, because that does stop most of the cavalry's plans. Some things don't fall into place for them specifically because Jud Crawford isn't there. Some things have to be moved up and made faster because Jud Crawford isn't there. And it sets Angela and Will on the path to taking down the 7th Cavalry. If that hadn't have happened, if Angela hadn't spoken through Dr. Manhattan through time, maybe Will and Angela wouldn't have joined together here and finished the 7th Cavalry plan. So I love that that's all connected together.
Yeah, I think it's a really kind of good explanation of just like how it all goes back to the White Night at Christmas, because that's the moment when the 7th Cavalry knew that Dr. Manhattan was on Earth.
Yes.
And specifically with Angela Abar, because we see Dr. Manhattan, Cal, what I thought actually was probably him blowing his head up or something like he was doing outside the Abar household in the last episode, but actually he just teleported him to New Mexico.
Gary.
Yes.
From 7th Cavalry.
Yeah,
yes.
Gary from 7th Cavalry, who then phoned back to say, I'm in New Mexico, and that's the moment. And so they put Jud Crawford into place to get close to the family.
Yeah.
As you say, to hide in plain sight. So I really like this kind of explanation that was coming out, for sure.
And one thing that could be slightly confusing for people that didn't read the comic books, Senator Keene does call out that this is the birthplace of Dr. Manhattan, just to make sure, because I was looking going, no, he was born in Germany. Right? Because we had that whole scene where he went from Germany to England and then stayed in England and then moved over to America. That's where the accident happened that birthed Dr. Manhattan, not John Osterman. So just to make sure that was clear for everybody, because I was kind of going, no, he's definitely wasn't born in New Mexico. But yes, that's where the accident happened.
Yeah, and it's where, if you read the comics, you can see that he that's where he started to build himself back together again, when he was seen as the ghost of a walking circulatory system.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So a special connection for him there as well.
Yeah, I'm so happy about this. All the points that you've said, but also the fact that for me, it's a good thing that he was a bad guy, that he was put down the way he was, because if it had have been the other way, that would have been something that would have lived with Angela and Will for years. Yeah. And at this point, we now know, actually, no, they didn't do something wrong. Like, well, they did, they killed, but you know what I mean. It's actually, he was actually a racist. He was part of the 7th Cavalry. It was his job to infiltrate.
Absolutely. And again, Hooded Justice, Will Reeves, has done his job once again. He's found another high-level member of Cyclops and put them to death. You know, he told Jud Crawford to hang himself when he found out that he was a high-level member of the Cyclops, and he's now taken out all the other members of Cyclops, right? So that's a good thing, or at least all the active members that were in Oklahoma at the time. I don't think Cyclops is gone. I think if you are going to do a second series, you still have Cyclops available in other cities around the country of America. They're not all gone, but there's definitely these people here in this room, most of the high-level members, including Senator Keene, the original, who's the person that originally took the masks off the table, took all of the Minutemen and all the members of the superhero societies, told them to take their masks off. So he is also a member of this group as well. So I thought that was quite interesting too.
And it was all part of their plan as well, which is explained by Keene Jr. But okay, so that was your point. Let's move it on to John. What was your next biggest point of this episode?
It's that Mum's gone to Iceland, which I suppose that is reference to frozen calamari that rains down upon thee. The reference to Mum's gone to Iceland is an advert in UK and Ireland where it's a supermarket and it sort of specializes in frozen food, basically.
We're coming close to Christmas time. The Iceland ad where you can buy your entire Christmas dinner frozen for about £4 has been playing over and over again.
So they would love what Adrian White did, because they would just have bags sort of catching the frozen calamari and then selling them on. So it's the plan. It's the fact that first of all, because of the mishap that happens to Senator Keene Jr., that Laurie Blake, Looking Glass, and Adrian White are able to be teleported by by Dr. Manhattan to Karnak, where then you have this really interesting moment where it's like, Agent Blake thinks that they can just stop it and save Cal, and you have Adrian kind of very matter of factly just going, no, he's dead, but we can stop her. As he effectively gets Looking Glass to turn the temperature down so that when he opens up one of his portals, he will effectively be hurtling frozen calamari at terminal velocity down onto Tulsa. I did think that the effect of the frozen calamari was slightly inconsistent in that, you did have the hole in the hand of Lady True, yet Red Scare seemed to kind of come off pretty unscathed. And
her, Jenny, and Red Scare definitely get away.
Yeah.
There was I know what you mean. The projectile power of this frozen calamari, frozen to 22 degrees. Remember, that's American 22 degrees, because I was like, that's like a balmy summer's day. Yeah, that's not frozen at all. But yeah, it should go through the metal in cars if it's gone through the bone in her hand that quickly, it definitely takes out a ship directly over her head.
That's it. It takes out the quantum centrifuge.
Yeah.
Not a ship.
Sorry,
the quantum centrifuge.
You're absolutely right. Yes.
But I did like the plan. I like the fact that, Cal, Dr. Manhattan, he obviously knew those elements that were going to play out here. And it gives them this moment to stop, as I say, in a sense, that villain of the piece looking for that ultimate power to wield rather than be sort of agnostic on it and sit back like he had done. And maybe that's where he was coming at it from. But, I just like this, and I like the whole setup of these three, Blake, Veidt, and Looking Glass in Karnak, trying to help with the teleporter, the squids, and raining destruction down upon Tulsa.
Absolutely. What a great grouping these three are.
I really, really enjoyed these three playing off one another.
Absolutely.
Sure.
I love Larry's arrival in the office. Why the F are we in the office? Why do they send to the office? Oh, and then Adrian kind of goes, oh, of course, because obviously I can do something from my office. Right, off we go with our plan, and away we go. Yeah, really good fun. Also, the poor Looking Glass, every time the Manhattan powers are used to teleport him, throwing up each time, you just feel kind of sorry for him, don't you?
Yeah.
Like, there's even that moment where he throws up the first time the powers are used, and then his weapon is taken off him by the magnetism that's being used by Lady True's people as well. So it's just quite funny seeing the poor character being treated so badly. And we haven't seen him in 3 episodes now at this stage. So
yeah, I'm glad we got him in this episode as well. And I do like that with, Spanner in hand, he does come to save the day, and do what I suppose Rorschach wasn't able to do in the end. A little more low tech, effectively.
Well, that was actually one of my notes that I have for later on. It's just the fact that effectively we have Laurie Blake, who was the partner of Dan Dryberg at the time. She is back again at Karnak. She's the one that arrests Adrian Veidt. And on the other side, we have Looking Glass, who's kind of a version of Rorschach if his brain wasn't completely broken and he wasn't a really horrible human being, effectively. And he's the one that gets to knock out Adrian Veidt. So the two of them get to do what Dan and Rorschach weren't able to do back in 85. So I kind of like that. Yeah.
And of course, Archie is back as well.
And Archie's there, yeah. I'm wondering whether Looking Glass and Laurie Blake are going to have a little relationship in the future. Why not?
Can't imagine it.
I could see it.
We'll see what happens with season 2.
Okay.
But Chris, then, what is your medium point?
I am so happy I'm walking on water. So for me, this was everything about this episode. I'm happy with the ending that we were given. From Mum's being going to Iceland and saving some money, and saving the world, to actually the ending and goodbye of John and Cal. So I kept expecting John Alstrom and Cal to kind of reconstitute because the central fugal thingamabob, go on, John.
Quantum centrifuge.
There you go.
There we are. The quantum centrifuge thingamabob was destroyed. I was expecting John to basically rematerialize over time. Like, I was expecting like a blue light just to kind of appear, and again a circulatory system just to kind of reappear or something like that.
Okay.
Because I was like, okay, but no, Dr. Manhattan is dead.
Well, now in fairness, just to give your theory a little bit of credence, Chris, we only spent one more night in Tulsa, and it took months and months for him to reconstitute. The first time.
True.
The second time, you're right, he did reconstitute in Karnak when this happened to him by Adrian Veidt's hand. He did reconstitute quite quickly. So he could be somewhere in the middle, or maybe just didn't want to show himself that quickly, or there is a possibility, though, that he's not gone forever, because this kind of thing seems to happen sometimes to poor Dr. Manhattan.
But we are also given an explanation of that he believed that something like this would happen. He told Angela about the eggs.
Mm-hmm.
And you need to break a few eggs to make an omelette. And we get a flashback to the introduction where he talks about sharing his power in an egg, and the theory that he could place his power in there. If someone wants to take that egg, they could share his power, or take his power, or become, or kind of embody him, excuse me. And when we end this episode, we end on the theory that she's about to try walking on water, because the first episode after he is revealed, he is walking on water, and she goes, "Why are you doing this? You need to see this," he replies.
This is important for the future, yeah.
Yeah. So I was so happy, and I'm walking on water, because they don't actually show us. The final shot of this season is fantastic. The foot does not go through the water. The foot does not stay on top of the water. The foot just stops. And that could be that she's just, we don't know. The future is tenable here. The future, like, we don't know what will happen. She may have been given the powers of Dr. Manhattan. She may not have. It's just this really nice not knowing, that they've given us hope.
Yes, definitely.
That the God is still there. And the God in this case is a woman. Not Alanis Morissette, but Angela Abar.
Absolutely. It is that Sarah Connor moment of the future is untold.
Yes.
And for me, it was definitely that Inception moment of the spinning top. You know, will it fall? Will it keep spinning? Is he in reality? Is he in a dream? In this case, is she a god? Isn't she a god? Is she walking on water? Is she about to basically get wet?
Face planted in a pool.
Belly flop.
Yep.
And I really liked that, I have to say. I think the other thing I really enjoyed in this moment was, as you say, Chris, the goodbye of John Cal to Angela when he's in the lithium restraining cage, and he loses his color. I thought that was a really, in all this craziness that was going on, the shot really came down into a really nicely intimate moment.
Yeah.
I felt between these two characters, given, the 10 years they've spent together, given last episode we saw how they met, and at least the initial craziness for Angela of this, unimaginative person, in the form of, John Osterman, Dr. Manhattan, and then within Cal. So, it was, it's that kind of moment where, not that she's been restraining him with the atom symbol in his head. It feels like with that being released, and she has such a short time then with him as she knew him when she first met him in the bar in Saigon. So I thought it was a really intimate moment that happened between these two, which I thought was really, really good.
It was just heartbreaking, wasn't it? Just that moment, because again, she spent 6 months with Dr. Manhattan before he became Cal, really, before he lost everything and became Cal. And he makes this choice, it seems, in that final moment to say, "I love you" and goodbye to the woman he loves. he makes that choice to pull himself all the way back to Cal. He doesn't change into the way she first saw him. It's the way that she spent 10 years with him is what he changes into to say goodbye to her. And I just think it was very emotional, really perfectly played.
Yeah. And for me, that was kind of culmination was just the actual, where are you, Cal? Where are you? I'm in every moment we were ever together.
Yeah, really good.
You know that whole thing, which is, okay, if you could have 10 years of the happiest time of your life, but you know it's going to end, would you still do it? And that's what this whole thing is about, which is he knew he was going to pass on in his case, but he still chose to spend those 10 years with her because he knew he would have 10 years of not remembering it, but still, until the end.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was so poignant. I really enjoyed it. Yeah. Although one question kind of niggles at me at this, which is there's he says there's one bit where he's away, and he kind of goes when he's saying this, he's talking. There's one where it doesn't line up, and I don't know which part he was talking to in the timeline. It's basically, I can't place all of his words and sentences.
I have it in notes, but if there's any particular ones that aren't standing out to you, they're all actually comic book quotes. They're all from the original storyline that John Osterman's re-experiencing all the things that happened in the past. Like, for example, he goes, "Jenny, are you cold?" which was the first Christmas that he spent with Jenny back in 1954, I think, or 55, something like that. He spent the first Christmas with her, and that's a line that he's saying there. The line he says about, there's no particular problem going on in Afghanistan at the moment, not that I'm aware of, think is what he says. That's from when his first television appearance, which we see in the comic book just before he disappears off to Mars, or driven off to Mars by humans. There's loads of that stuff. It's really good touches that he's saying lines that we haven't seen in the TV show. It's stuff that happened in the comic book before he left Earth.
That's why. So, okay. Thank you. Thank you because for me, I was like, I don't understand. I haven't seen Cal mention these parts, or haven't seen John mention these parts in the episodes we've seen to date. Yeah. And I was just like racking my brain. Oh my God, that just makes it even better. It really does.
Like, I love it. You know, it's effectively the idea of the TV show is, if you don't know the comic books, you'll understand he's going through things that we may not know at all. He says I'm all over time. This whole thing is affecting his ability to just focus on one space. He eventually is able to focus on the relationship between him and Angela, which is keeping him together for those final moments, I suppose. But I love the extra touch that if you've read the comic books, you may know where some of these bits are from and who the people he's talking about are from, but they don't necessarily mean anything specific in the scenes. That's all. He's just trying to focus on moments from his life.
No, that's so much even better. Okay. Knowing that, it makes me even happier. Gentlemen, hark, I do hear a click talking. I believe it is time to move on because the doomsday clock is set to 3 minutes to midnight.
The doomsday clock has been set to 3 minutes to midnight.
So, John, do you want to give us your final small points for this episode?
Yes. It was Lady True's, you need to filter all that energy before you absorb it. Literally the disbelief from Lady True that Senator Keene is in that box. You know, as she opens the pod and it's kind of like, from Overlook Hotel in The Shining as the lifts open and all this bloody gunk comes out and it's like, oh, Senator Keene Jr. pops like a watermelon literally after delivering his like fait accompli of how smart the 7th Cavalry have been to capture Dr. Manhattan. You know, the reason why they were stripping all the lithium from the old batteries, which was again another little question answered from the first episode. And yet, the whole thing from Lady True is, well, you need that thing flying up in the sky that I've brought along just because, you're going to pop like a watermelon. I thought that was just spot on. Absolutely. Spot on. Great stuff. And then, I think she at least focuses some kind of energy on the rest of the 7th Cavalry that makes them go, pop as well, really. So I really enjoyed this moment, just because it made all the sweeter after Senator Keene, in his crazy underpants, is really trying to say how great they've been in figuring all this out. And in fact, they knew nothing because they were held all the way by Lady True. And as you said, Chris, you know, she was using them to mask her plans. So I just like this, popping like a watermelon.
Yes, they are very much like Jon Snow. They know nothing.
It is so worthwhile, isn't it? After that absolutely disgusting speech that Keene gives about how difficult it is in America these days to be a white man. Oh God, it just made me want to strangle him. And then to realize he just popped on his own in that box and he's just ended off, you know, in the sluice grates down the side of the street in Oklahoma, exactly where people like that belong. So I'm glad it happened to every other member of the cavalry that was there as well.
Maybe somewhere in New Mexico he is reconfiguring like a watermelon, so just the pips will start to appear.
Oh, this is really difficult. Hopefully not. Hopefully he will never be back.
Well, he'll be eaten or dehydrate in the sun.
In the summer sun in Mexico, absolutely.
The reason I'm okay with Keene popping like that, it was just that final comment to Angela, where you can see, he just shows his pure racist soul, and you're just like, all right, bye.
See you later. You get in that box.
We know you're gonna die now.
Don't let the door hit you on the way in.
If he was a watermelon, I would not be eating that. But anyway, rather than my culinary choices, Derek, what is your final point?
You know, everybody is probably looking for little clues as to whether there is a second season coming or is there anything going to happen in the future of this show. One person that has always been in the show and people have had various theories about is Topher, Christopher, the son of Angela Barr. And I just wanted to point out a little moment in the episode, just in case people might have missed a little moment. After they're in the Dreamland cinema and they're walking away and they go into the bakery that we saw from the first couple of episodes, Sister Night, her hideout effectively, we have a moment with young Topher staring at his mother's outfit, her superhero gear. And he suddenly has that realization of who his mother really is. Somebody else had a similar realization in the past. Will Reeves' son had seen his father dressed up as Hooded Justice, had tried to imitate him, saying, I'm like you, Dad, and got told to take that off. And that's what broke up June and Will Reeves. So I wonder, with all of the new information that Angela Barr now has, I don't think she's probably going back out in the streets as a superhero in the future. But I wonder, would she discourage Topher from taking up that in the future? Is this setting up the idea that maybe, in a few years' time, Topher grows up to be a masked vigilante taking after his mother and grandfather?
I'm right there with you on this. I do believe so. I believe that if we are ever shown Topher again, it will be that Angela has... I actually think Angela will continue as Sister Night.
Okay.
I think she's seen the need for the vigilantism, the masks, especially those last piece between herself and Will. Basically it was his fear that drove him. It wasn't anger.
Fear and sadness, yeah.
So I do believe that is still a thing. I believe she will continue for the fear of what will happen if she was not there. With John gone, with all these things, I believe she will continue. But I do also think that with all of the nostalgia in her, allowing her to have seen Will's participation in that memory, and how that went so badly. She doesn't say no. She doesn't yell at Topher to get away.
Exactly. Yeah.
She just nods at him and tells him to come. And I think that's yes, I do believe Topher will be a masked vigilante, or not a masked cop, perhaps, going forward.
I'm just intrigued by the interaction between the two of them because it's wordless. You know, there is that moment where he has that realization like kids have when they suddenly pull the pieces together in their mind, and she just nods and says, kind of, you've worked it out, basically. Which I just like, which is different again from Will's reaction to his son, when he saw that his father was Hooded Justice. So, I like that potentially the next generation will be very different. You know, and also remember, all of these cops are in masks because of what Keane did and what Judd Crawford did. So whether they'll be in masks next week when the police force in Oklahoma goes back to being the same kind of police force as every other state in the country, they may not be wearing masks. They may be back to being just regular beat cops without masks on them. So we just don't know what's going to happen in the future, but I like that we have some questions for possible futures.
Or it could be the reverse mask, like Superman, who puts on his glasses.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're dressed down to walk out.
The cheapest mask in the world.
A pair of bifocals.
Bifocals. They're pretty expensive, actually.
Exactly.
So that's a possible potential future. Chris, do you want to give us the small thing that you haven't talked about in this episode?
My final point really is, what's next? Where does this leave us? What potentially can happen? What threads are left unanswered? We've talked a few of them already, which is, so Will Reeves is now staying with Angela. The kids are fine. Will she continue her vigilantism or her masked cop? Because as you say, it's all going to come out that this was the Keanes, the two of them. But actually, the reason the masked vigilantes were told to demask and they became criminal was because of Keane Sr. So will that have all come out? Is John Osterman, is Cal dead? Will he be able to reconstitute? Does Angela, is she now Dr. Manhattan? The fact that Ozymandias now is going to jail and that will Looking Glass become an FBI agent and work with Laurie Blake going forward? There are so many questions. But at the same time, I really want to say, if none of those questions are answered, and if when we get a season 2, it has nothing to do with this, I am 100% okay.
Yeah.
If we even don't get a season 2, I'm pretty sure we're going to get a season 2 just based on the numbers, the figures, the everything. I'm pretty sure we're going to get a season 2. I don't think it will be the same characters. I don't think it will be the same. There may be some thread lines or through lines, I should say, but I'm okay. This for me has been a television season for the decade. It really has been one of the greatest pieces of writing. Just the whole lot for me has left me on the edge of my seat. Yeah, so I've asked the question, so what's next? Where does this leave us?
We used to have a lot of these things when we were younger, which were called event series. Yeah. That used to happen a lot. Yeah. They don't happen very much anymore. You have some kind of mini-series. BBC do them a lot, where they do 4 or 5 episodes of a show and then they never ever return to that show again. I'm hopeful, actually, with the show being as good as it is, I'm hopeful they don't return unless they have a great idea and a great story to tell. Because I think a lot of writers could come in and tell you a story of what happens next. You know, somebody could write next week's episode, and I don't know whether it will form the same kind of feeling that this show has given to Watchmen. You know, I could tell you next week, Sister Knight's out in the street taking down criminals. Yay, great. And Looking Glass is back out in the street next week. You know, great. It's just a standard comic book story on TV, but this show has really done something and told a story through the medium of comic book TV that I don't think would have been able to tell without this particular writer's room and this particular, 500 people that are involved in this show, everybody from the actors and the people behind the scenes and the set makers and everybody who's making this show the way it's been made right now. One thing that Damon Lindelof is very clear about pointing out, while his name is on the writer section of the episodes, this was a true writer's room. There were people in this room for a year and a half breaking every beat of the story. And the people who get the credit on the final episode is just that they wrote most of the dialogue that forms the episode. But all of the ideas came from this writer's room. So if somebody else in the writer's room who hasn't been a showrunner before has a great idea for a season 2, that's also a possibility. Come back and do a season 2. It doesn't have to be Damon Lindelof, but somebody involved in this version of the show has the same kind of love and belief for the material coming back and do a season 2. There's definitely ideas that you can take going forward, but I think this feels like the original comic books that were never followed up until this TV show, and that's taken 30 odd years to do. So what do you do? Could this possibly be followed up in 8 or 9 months with another show with the same kind of impact? I can't imagine it.
So in an interview, which we talked, I briefly discussed, they called the original comic book the the Old Testament. And when they're in the writer's room, the original comic book was called the Old Testament. I now see this as the New Testament.
Okay.
This is their first book. What I could see and what I would be happy with would be a true detective style piece, which is season 2 is a completely different standalone story.
Yeah.
With no connection. There is one question I have, which is outstanding, which is where's Dan Driver?
Mm-hmm.
Could we see what happened to Dan Driver? Could we have an episode or a mini series about that? That is a story potentially that I would be interested in. But I'm with you as well. I'm happy with this to stay as an event series. This is a one-off. Unfortunately, we live in a capitalistic world where I do not think that from the money that this show has brought in for HBO, that I do not believe that will be the case. I believe Damon Lindelof will not attach himself to it unless he has one. He said he doesn't have one, but if he ever had one, he would come back. I do believe that potentially some of the other writers might have, and they may do something, but I don't want them to do a direct sequel to this season 1. I would like, if they do season 2, it is American Horror Story season 2. It is a completely different story. Yeah. It's another year later, but with none of the same characters. What happened when Ozymandias's and Redford's plan is the evidence is given to the state? Does that make sense?
It is a weird one, yeah, because it did wait 30 years since the original. It makes total sense what you're saying, but some of the impact of the show is, they're bringing Laurie in and we haven't seen her in 30 years. And there's such a massive change in that character because during the intervening period, she became the comedian for a while and went out in the streets as a vigilante. So a very different version of the character that we saw years ago. Adrian Veidt being back after 30 years. What happened to that guy? He saved the world and nobody thanked him for it. Dr. Manhattan, he went off to Mars. What happened to him? And they're brought back. If you have a second season, what's the impact of bringing those characters in? They would have to be very minor players in the next season, or we'd have to have brand new characters and not have any connection to the original comic books as well. So would it have a similar feeling at all to Watchmen? I just don't know where it would go from here. And I'm really happy with that ending. And John, your reference of Inception, of the spinning top at the end of Inception, did it fall? Did it stay up? Are they in a dream world? Are they in the real world? That's a great thing for this show, to have her about to step in the pool. Did she get the ability to walk on water? Did she get the full Dr. Manhattan powers? Did she get absolutely no powers? Did she just eat a raw egg and get salmonella? You know, well, that's all the questions answered in your own mind. That's all your choices. So
I think that's it, isn't it? I think I always battle a little bit with sequels, prequels and all that, because to be honest, that's the age we're in at the moment. It's that we must have another because that was so good. And you know, you can have a lifespan of something, sure, and it needs to be done. So I think with time and consideration, and I think certainly because this was done with a writer's room, yes, Damon Lindelof is kind of the key showrunner here, maybe, and certainly the key writer in terms of at least credits, but he's always recognizing the writer's room. But it seemed like they really did, go to town on this and took their time on this. So I think if there is to be another one, it needs time, because this certainly took a long time to get there, because otherwise you just get something thrown out. And again, it's like with films these days. It's kind of why I like Christopher Nolan so much, is that he does Inception and, you know, an original movie in a time where we don't get that too often these days, at least not on a big scale.
Yep.
And he decides, right, that's it. I've told the story. I move on. And I think that equally is valid, because I think sometimes that's good for the art, which is TV making. I get what you're saying, Chris. It's in a corporate world, and there are jobs to be filled, there's money to be made, and so on. But I think TV, film, theatre, all these kind of different mediums operate in a space that's not just purely corporate.
Yeah. And I suppose the good thing is all three of us are saying exactly the same thing. Basically, this could be the end. This could be the last for it. And we're all pretty happy with how it's all played out. And I presume if the idea is there in the future, and it's a good idea, the money's there for it to come back.
Yeah.
literally while we've been recording, the ratings came in for last night's episode in the US, and it's the highest rated of all of the episodes. So everybody that's been watching it, time shifted, tuned in live to watch it last night. So love that. So it definitely was a success as a TV show, and hopefully in future, if there's a great idea, the money's there for it. It doesn't have to be a sequel, doesn't have to be a follow-up, but if the right idea comes to the people that are involved, it'll be available there. That's kind of cool.
This should have been Chris's 5 minutes to midnight.
Yes, it should have been. But it is now 2 minutes to midnight.
The doomsday clock is now at 2 minutes. I repeat, 2 minutes to midnight.
Yes, our moment where we just talk about some Easter eggs, some comic connections, some things that we may have noticed that we haven't talked about already. We've talked about a lot of them, I think, as we went through the episodes. But Chris, is there anything specific you want to call out here?
Yes. The first one for me is, where is Loopman? Yes, I believe I missed something quite small or quite big, depending on. But yes, where is Loopman? Oh, Derekpedia, please enlighten me.
Well, we did talk about it in our feedback episode last week. There is a mention in Pedopedia that they kind of have revealed that Petey, Agent Dale Petey, who writes Pedopedia, is Loopman. That's the reason we saw him, because he was now in Oklahoma and he was going out at night dressed up as Loopman, or going out during the daytime dressed up as Loopman, following Laurie. And we thought we would see him in the last episode at some point, sneaking in maybe to save the day, but he didn't do that. There is a new piece on Pedopedia, which is the piece we talk about on our feedback episode. We'll talk about it later on in the week. But effectively, it does confirm that Agent Dale Petey is Loopman. And he's not the most massively credible superhero, if you remember the character on the show. Yeah. But we'll talk about it on the next episode. It's nothing too important, I suppose.
Well, he's a slippery character. He can certainly escape down a tight hole.
Yes, exactly. And he's based on the characters from Fog Dancing, the book. They're called Fog Dancers. He thinks he's really cool. He's dressed up in this uniform, and he gets effectively reduced to this name Loopman. So that probably didn't do his ego much use.
No, probably not. But we will talk more about that in our feedback episode later in the week. My next one is, strangely, it's just a point. We know that Dan Dreiberg is in prison. We never got a mention outside of that. We never saw anything outside of that. I would have liked to see that character. I like the fact that he potentially could have become the original Night Owl, such that he could have been working above the garage. He could have become the original Night Owl, passing it on like a torch. I did like that idea, but it was just a shame. Because we did see Archie at the very end. Yeah,
and there's references to him. There's references that he was put in prison because he didn't actually go down the side of joining the task force to take down vigilantes. He stayed being a vigilante with Laurie for a while. We know he ran his own company, and he's the one that supplies the police force with their equipment effectively. I kind of like the idea, and again, this is a little bit behind the scenes information, but I kind of like the idea that they said, he's just another white guy, and there's so many white people in the show, and he's already had effectively all of Watchmen is told from Dan Dreiberg's perspective of learning about it through the original Night Owl. So, did you really need to bring back every single character? Maybe. You might want to check in on him, of course, and they probably will if they do a season 2. They probably will have Dan Dreiberg in there. But they kind of felt that they just didn't find a space for him. There just was so many other characters to deal with, and you have a massive amount of new characters as well that they're trying to get on screen. Loads that didn't even get enough time on screen as it is. Everybody wants to see more of Looking Glass, even though he got his entire own episode as well. But yeah, I know what you mean, Chris. It stands out as to why we didn't see any actor playing Dan Dreiberg.
It is. For me, it's inside baseball. I completely understand. I completely agree with the reason we didn't see him. The comic book fanatic in me, the fan, was like, oh, well, I wish we kind of had even just they could have got a well-known actor on the level of Jeremy Irons just to have that 3-minute interaction. I thought that would just been nice. But again, we could potentially be used for season 2, potentially used in some other fashion. That's really it for my 3 points. It was just that, we already discussed that Archie's back. Where was old DD, and where was Loopman? John, any points from your side?
Yeah, we've got Adrian Veidt catching a bullet there on Europa in a nod to the comics, where he does the same as well.
Where Laurie tries to shoot him, yeah.
Yeah, where Laurie tries to shoot him and he catches the bullet. And I did really like that interaction with Mr. Phillips, or should I say the gamekeeper, where he goes. The gamekeeper goes, "Was I a worthy adversary, master?" Because, he's talking about having he had to wait out time for 8 years on Europa. So he needed not just simply these clones of Mr. Phillips and Miss Crookshanks, but this worthy adversary. And just the deadpan no. But you did give it a good shot kind of thing, a good run.
Put on a good show.
Yeah. I just thought that was, really good. A little moment as you see the disappointment in the gamekeeper's eyes, as also then the life drains from his eyes. So it was I think a really kind of interesting moment between these two. But certainly, yes, not as worthy as we thought.
Exactly.
This adversary. And my only other note is that as, Angela, the kids and Will are leaving Dreamland Theatre after the fall of the Frozen Calamari, which is not a political organisation.
Could be a new album, though.
Yeah, the Dreamland Cinema, all the different bulbs of those letters that are illuminated, have been knocked out by the Frozen Calamari to leave Dr. Manhattan, which I thought was a nice,
Dr. M, D, R, and M.
Yeah, well, D, R, and M, so Dr. M, Dr. Manhattan. So
yes.
I thought that was a nice little touch. And just quickly on that, I thought that conversation between Will and Angela in the cinema was just really nice. And I think it comes back to your point about maybe, the future vigilantes won't need to wear masks, or whether Angela herself is actually the new Dr. Manhattan, having taken the yoke, because, Will says, you can't heal under a mask. Wounds need, and I thought that was just a nice little, quote from Will Reeves there.
Absolutely.
To his granddaughter.
Yeah. Yeah. A really beautiful sentiment, I suppose, at this stage. This is a guy that's lived, his whole life being hooded justice, and now they don't need it anymore. That hopefully, things are starting to change a little bit, in there. I do love the quote from Bian as she's, stealing the sample that will eventually become Lady True. The quote that she says in Vietnamese is a quote attributed to the original Lady True from the 3rd century, where she's talking about, I want to ride the strong winds and I will not bend and break to become a slave. Right at the beginning of the episode, it's just a really nice touch that's a quote attributed to the original Lady True, before Lady True is created. So really nice. Final note, we would be remiss to not comment on how awesome that choice of music right at the end of the episode. They've done some great choices throughout this season, but choosing I Am the Walrus for the title of the episode, which is See How They Fly, that's also from the song I Am Walrus, but this cover version by Spooky Tooth, this kind of even more psychedelic than the Beatles cover version of I Am the Walrus. I didn't think that was possible. But what a great choice. We have that moment just after Angela has downed the egg, as it sings over the top of it, I am the Eggman, we are the Eggmen. What a perfect choice for at the finale of the episode. I'm presuming using the Beatles as your outro to your series might be quite expensive, so I'm glad they did a choice of at least a very psychedelic 70s version of the song. It's very cool.
Yes. No, it was definitely an ending and a half. I text Derek the second, we saw it, and my response as it was finishing was, oh, I am the Eggman.
Exactly. That's it for notes. I'm sure there's hundreds more. This is not the last time we'll be talking about The Watchmen. We will be talking about it in our feedback episode. As I said, email us with your thoughts to feedback@tvpodcastindustries.com. We will be doing our feedback episode on the 19th of December, Thursday, and we'll have it out before Christmas, I promise.
Yes, we will. But gentlemen, as we wrap up our thoughts and feelings, any last words?
All of our thoughts and feelings are just about this episode, Chris.
Whichever you prefer. We can sit down and record another 2 hours if you want to get all your feelings.
I will have thoughts and feelings in future. They may not be about the specific episode, but I will have thoughts and feelings.
Yes. So, John, what did you think of episode 9? See How They Fly.
Well, for me, I'm giving this 5 popped watermelons out of 5. And I'm going to keep this succinct. Everything exceptional for real this time. I just thought I've never given so many 5s in a series, and this was no exception. It cleared everything up, and it left a few little nuggets where we can just think and ruminate on them for the next 30 years until season 2 comes out on HBO at some point, probably virtual reality brain implants.
Beamed directly to your eyes.
Yes, exactly.
HBO Supermax, would that be it?
And I just thought this was really well crafted, really nicely done. And so, yeah, 5 popped watermelons out of 5. I can't really heap enough popped watermelon praise on it, as I would like to.
Excellent. Derek, how did you See How They Fly?
This episode was amazing, and I think one of the most interesting things about it is that it circles everything and turns everything into its own circle as well. Whether we get a season 2 or not, we have a season 2, which is watching season 1 again. And then we have a season 3, which is watching season 1 again, because there are nods from the final episode going all the way back to the beginning of the first episode. I love this idea, and one that came out, in some discussions that were had with Damon and Lindelof as well, where right at the beginning of the first episode, we saw a 7th Cavalry member getting caught, on the road by a police officer, and we saw lettuce in the back of his van. What we didn't see, and what was in there, was Lady True batteries were in the back of this guy's van. The plan had been unveiled in the first episode as to what was going to happen in the 9th episode. Yeah? So every single episode that you go back and watch, there's going to be something like that. There's going to be little tricks, little twists that they've done that you can only see once you've seen the full story revealed here in episode 9. That doesn't happen very often. You don't get to a season finale. We've done so many season finales on TV podcast industries where we get to the end and go, oh, that was a bit of a damp squib at the end, wasn't it? Oh, about 10 minutes too long. Oh, I wish they'd edited it down to a couple of episodes shorter or a couple of minutes shorter because the ending wasn't great. They didn't nail the ending. Superhero landing right here, guys, for me. This was perfect.
Damp squid, I think you'll find.
Damp squid, yes. Some series have had a damp squid. This one had a frozen in carbonite squid. Or a frozen in carbonite Adrian Veidt, at least. Chris, what's your thoughts before I go off on some very weird tangent?
When we were talking offline, Derek, I mentioned when we were discussing the episode of Dr. Manhattan and the time jumps, I talked about a Mobius strip, this theory of a winding interlooped timeline where everything is possible and everything is seen at the same time. Mm-hmm. That is this season for me. It is improbable. It is a theorem. It is based on physics and very much real, but at the same time improbable. As you said, I will watch this season again and be able to pick up things I never saw before, but to continue that watch because those things I pick up on the second viewing in my third viewing will enhance even further. Yeah. I can't echo what you guys have said more, and add more heaps and praises because there's nothing else to be said. This for me is potentially one of the greatest pieces of television in the last decade for me. It had the superhero landing, as you said. It was just fantastic. Do I want to see a season 2? Yeah, I want to see a season 2. Do I want to see any season 2? No. I want to see the correct season 2. Yes. And I want them to take their time. I want them to take another 5 years, 2 years, 10 years, as long as it takes to get something on that level. So let's see where it goes. But that was all our thoughts on this episode.
And we all lied to you, fellow watchers. We've lied to you. We said there's nothing else to say. There's loads more left to say. You have your thoughts to say. And we want to hear them. We want to talk about them. Email us to feedback@tvpodcastindustries.com or join us over in our Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/tvpodcastindustries. There's a spoiler post for every single episode, including the finale over there. We want to hear your thoughts. There's some already in there. We have some voicemails in already, but we want to hear every piece of thought that you have about this season, because we know you've all been enjoying it as well. So let us know and we'll discuss them on our next episode.
Yes, because we also know there was a lot to take in, a lot to process. We're giving you 24 hours extra to get us that information, to get us that feedback, to get us your thoughts. And really, I do love hearing your voices on our podcast. So make sure, if you have the ability, to record a short clip of yourself on your phone and email it to us, or jump over to the website where you can record up to 90 seconds of your thoughts. Fellow watchers, thank you for joining us. We hope you stay subscribed to our podcast. We will have one more Watchmen episode, as we said, this feedback episode, coming out very soon. We record Thursday, and then our lovable editor and producer and magic Minuteman, if you will, our Watchman, will pull it all together and get it out very soon, or at least particularly over the Christmas period. Thank you so much again. We hope you stay subscribed. We will have more information coming out very soon about what we will be covering in early 2020, as soon as we get our ducks in a row, because you know what? Ducks are very hard to get into a row, and sometimes they just run off into corners, but we will get them in a row. We will get them to you.
See, fellow watchers, he has to be really polite to me because he knows I have to edit this episode. So he knows I have to do a really good job at making sure Chris sounds great and John sounds great and I sound great. So I should have the episode out sometime mid-January. No, we'll be out before Christmas, I promise. Also want to say a huge thank you to our Patreons for December, who went over and joined us on patreon.com/TV Podcast Industries. Claire Payne, Stuart Campbell, Oren Dix, and Ken Hu, who've all contributed to the podcast and help us keep us going. If you want to contribute to the podcast, you can contribute any amount at patreon.com/TV Podcast Industries, and we'll give you a little shout out on the next episode.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Claire, Stuart, Oren, and Ken, for that Patreon support. And of course, thank you everyone who subscribes as well to TV Podcast Industries. Without your support, we wouldn't be able to do what we do, whether that's through Patreon, whether that is through subscribing and sharing our podcast with your friends, family, dare I say it, a little hark back to grannies as well, from our Defenders TV podcast,
or your watchmaking grandparents as well. Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly. Yes. That's really strong bifocals then.
Yeah. Once we are finished with our Watchmen episodes, this feedback episode of the last one we'll have out in 2019. 2020 kicks off with our review of 2019, where we'll discuss the kind of shows we'll be talking about next year and all the stuff that we did this year. Hoping to record that at the start of next year, so you'll get that in the first week of January. Tell you all about the stuff that we're going to be covering for the rest of 2020, or at least some of it. That's for all the stuff we know. That's about it. Bye bye, watchers. Yeah. Keep watching The Watchmen.
Yes, thank you so much, fellow watchers. We will be back soon.
As always, fellow watchers, thank you so much for joining us. It's been great having this discussion with you. And remember, keep watching, keep listening.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.